It's been almost a week since the Florida condo came crashing down, and there still hasn't been anyone pulled out alive from the rubble since hours after it collapsed last Thursday. At the time of our taping, 145 people are still unaccounted for. Today, we're getting a look at a letter that was sent from the board president to condo residents back in April. It describes the decay of the building, saying, quote, concrete damage observed would begin to multiply exponentially, and observable damage, such as in the garage, has gotten significantly worse. Now, the board reportedly wanted residents to help pay for the $15 million in repair to the building. And as we mentioned yesterday, a lot of people are focusing in on the pool area as a possible weak point that caused the collapse. But there are other possible theories. Some experts think this giant shock test that the Navy conducted off the coast of Florida, which registered as a 3.9 magnitude earthquake, could have contributed to the collapse. Area residents also complained about a development project next door, which they said regularly caused the building to shake. So joining us now is Allyn Kilsheimer, a world-renowned civil engineer who's been hired to investigate this very collapse. Allyn, thank you for being here despite the horrific circumstances. What are you looking at here as a possible reason that this building collapsed?
Well, let me start by saying I'm a structural engineer, not a civil engineer, but leave that aside. The way we investigate failures like this is we come up in our minds with all the potential possible causes we can think of. And then based on information we get, develop, test, computer programs we run, engineering analysis we do, we try to eliminate them one at a time. Sometimes the list gets longer and sometimes the list gets smaller. And when we have completed all these investigations that we need to be doing, we sometimes, usually when the trigger event is like a bomb or a hurricane or something like that, or a plane, we know what the trigger event was. In this case, we don't know what the trigger event was. So we're trying to figure out what the trigger event might be, or trigger events. And then you look at the various systems in the building to try and see if they weren't perfect. And in my 63 years of doing this, there's never been a perfect building. And there are always little things that are wrong with it. So then you look at these things that might have been wrong, and you say, if that trigger occurred, and that particular thing would have been perfect, then maybe it wouldn't have come down. And so you go through that, but in the very end, you probably will have several possibilities of why this thing came down, and you won't be able to get it past that point. But I don't know whether we're going to be at that point or not.
Well, you know, a lot has been made of this 2018 engineering report that recommended millions of dollars in repairs. As a structural engineer, if you saw that report, would you have been worried that the building was in danger of collapsing?
Well, first thing, remember, I'm a structural engineer, so theoretically I understand what that report says, right? And based on what I, as a structural engineer, would understand that says, no, that would not give me any indication that the building was in imminent danger of collapse.
Let's talk about the sister building. If you lived in one of them, would you feel comfortable living there right now?
Well, I'm going to answer that again from a structural engineering standpoint. If I lived in the building and I was not a structural engineer, I would say, gee, maybe I should be a little worried about this, right? But at the same time, one of the things I've been doing is looking at the drawings for the north building and the east building, beginning to understand some of those buildings too. And as I sit here today, I see nothing that tells me that either of those buildings is in imminent danger of structural collapse.
Now, across the country, a lot of people who live in high-rises right now are worried. So what advice do you have for them? Should they be looking for somewhere else that they think is safer, or is this just a Florida issue? How do you feel about that?
I don't think you throw what is it called? The food with the garbage or something. I think this is most probably, and again, I have 60 some odd years experience in doing this, and I've investigated probably 50 to 100 collapses. I think this is a one-off for this kind of issue, whatever this issue is. I certainly wouldn't be concerned with other buildings unless there was somebody found a structural design problem or a structural construction problem, and then they evaluated and determined if there was a problem. So no, I certainly wouldn't. I would tell those people don't worry, because if you don't know something for sure, and you can't listen to all these experts that really aren't experts, that don't, they just, you know, there's some people like to scare people, right?
Right.
So no, I wouldn't be concerned. And I don't live in a house. I live in a house, not a high rise. But I've never lived in a high rise. But our firm has designed several hundred of them. And you know, while we make mistakes and we design, we almost always catch the mistakes before they're a problem. And while buildings are built, there's always a little bit of a problem with a building when it's being built. They don't get everything perfectly, but usually you catch them. And then there's, you know, I always say buildings talk to you if you know how to listen to them. So the key is getting folks that know how to listen to buildings talking to them to understand.
Allyn, thank you. We have run out of time. We really appreciate you for clarifying and for joining us on DBL. Good luck getting to the bottom of this. We hope that people can have answers. I know a lot of the people out there are just in pure anguish, but they are in good hands, in your hands.